I joke with the college students. I'm about to do high school students. So listen, it's going to be short, but maybe not because I'm not sure. And we're going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah and how college is like that. God's going to send fire down because all the evil. So I'm just joking. We're not going to do that today. But it may not be far from the truth. But we're going to be in Exodus 32, 1 through 22. My mother, and all my parents as a whole, they always talked about the company I kept. When you think about people going to college, a lot of times, even if you're going down the road or up the road, depending on where you're going, even if you're living at home, you're going to meet new people, because it's not like high school where a lot of times you're in the same class and all that. You meet new people, because even if you're going to University of Southern Mississippi or Pearl River Community College, you're like, oh, I know a lot of people going there. Well, your class schedules may be different, or your programs may be different. So you're going to be meeting new people. You're going to be finding new friends. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, that's why it's the adults and senior adults and young children and college students already and young adults all the same. No matter where we go in life, a lot of times we meet new people. You have new friends. I've been blessed to live in Louisiana, Mississippi, and I'm back in Mississippi, and I have in every location different friends. And so, as I thought about it, I said, there's a lot of places in the Bible that are pretty much the same. We see these people who are around others of influence, and they get influenced one way or the other. And so we have to be mindful, we have to be careful of that. And we're going to see that in Scripture. I found a quote from George Washington. I thought he was a pretty good person to quote from. And I'm always trying to dig quotes and be like a preacher. I never can find a good one, but I did today. I was proud of myself. He said, this is what George Washington said about bad company. He said, it is better to be alone than with bad company. I was like, and I can remember that one. It's short, it's sweet, and it's truthful. He said it's better to be by yourself than to be in bad company. Company that is not in the way they should be, not living the way they should be, not doing the things they should do, not living the life they should live. You just might as well be alone. And so I took those words and I realized that he's very right, and so many times we need to be paying in mind and attention to that. So in Exodus chapter 32, 1 through 22, it's a lot of verses. Now stick with me. This is what it says. Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and asked him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Tear off your gold rings and those that are in your ears, with your wives and your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me." Then all the people tore off all their gold rings, which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. He took this from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made it a molten calf. And they saw this and said, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." Now, when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation, said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast of the Lord." So the next day they rose early and offered burnt offerings and had brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose to play. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Go down at once, for your people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I have commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf, and they have worshipped it, and have sacrificed to it. This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." The Lord said to Moses, "I have seen this people, and behold, they are an abstained people. Now then, let me alone, that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them, and I will make you a great nation." Then Moses entreated the Lord and said to the Lord, "O Lord, why does your anger burn against your people, whom you have brought from the land of Egypt, with a great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians speak, saying, 'With evil intent he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to destroy them from the face of the earth'? Turn from your burning anger and change your mind about doing harm to your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants to whom you swore by yourself. And he said to them, 'I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heavens in all the land of which I have spoken. I will give to you descendants, and they shall inherit forever.' So the Lord changed his mind about harming them, which he said he would do to his people. Then Moses turned and went down the mountain, and with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets which were written on both sides. They were written on one side and the other. The tablets were God's word, and the handwriting was God's writing engraved on the tablets. Now, when Joshua heard the sound of the people, as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a sound of war in the camp." But he said, "It is not the sound of the cry of a trumpet, nor is it the sound of the cry of defeat, but sounds of singing I hear." It came about as soon as Moses came near the camp that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger burned, and he threw the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf in which they had made, burned it with fire, ground it with powder, and scattered it all over the surface of the water, and made the sons of Israel drink it. Then Moses said to Aaron, "What did you do? What did this people do to you, that you would have brought them such great sin?" Aaron said, "Do not let the anger of my Lord burn. You know these people or yourself, that they are prone to evil." It's a lot of verses. I know. Thank you for sticking with me. There are 1,000 things that can be spoken out of this passage. As I read it, I was like, this is how the preacher could sit on like a chapter in Acts for 5 Sunday nights. Like it's when you see God just working in a mighty way and things like that. But I want to bring to you some points about the company you keep. If it's bad company, and a little bit about good company to kind of boost your spirits in the end. But as we see with Moses right here, and if you read a little bit beforehand, we see that when we live the way God desires us to, when we live the way God commands, good things happen. Simple, right? It doesn't mean hard things don't happen. It means good things happen. We see in the life of Moses, he's up on the mountain. Listen, this is not a flashy job he has. He is helping transport a bunch of knuckleheads out of Egypt who don't want to listen to God, and then he's got to leave all this comfort of what little bit they had and go up on a mountain, climb a mountain because God commanded him to. And in this time we see that Moses was blessed. Moses received the tablets that were God's own handwriting, God's own work. He was blessed by his effort. He was blessed by his faithfulness. And we see that he was allowed to see these tablets. He was allowed to be not just given the tablets, but see and be in the presence of God. He was able to sit in the presence of God when he got to go up on the mountain. And God has told us time and time again, and he's told you time and time again, and all I want you to do is follow me. And we see that Moses wasn't perfect. We know, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you. Moses doesn't even get to go to the promised land. Moses was a wonderful leader. He was a leader that most people would like to follow. He was sacrificial. He was willing to go to bat for you. He wanted the best for his people. You see that he's voicing to God, "God, don't kill them. Don't let your anger burn so deeply. Allow us to work through this." He was somebody who won't follow you, but he wasn't allowed into the promised land because he struck a rock. Because he wanted water out of the rock. And he disobeyed God because God said, "Hey, I want you to go speak to the rock, and the rock will produce water." And instead of doing that, he hit it with a stick, and it still produced water. But because of his disobedience, he wasn't allowed into the promised land. And we see that even though he was a great leader, even though he was someone who desired for his people to do well, even though he was someone who was committed to the Lord, that he still messed up. And we're human. And the thing about Moses you can see in his life is he didn't use that as an excuse. He wasn't one who was going to be like, "Oh, I'm human, so I guess I'm going to keep hitting this rock." Or, "Oh, I'm human, so I'm God, you can just go kill these people." That knuckleheads too, they have been a thorn in my flesh since Egypt. He wasn't one who did that. He was one who desired for these people to have that relationship with God. He was one who desired that even though he failed, even though he fallen, I want to be the best I can be for you, God. And Moses found good company. He kept good company for the most part. He had good company when he was in Egypt, when he was working. We'll talk about him a little bit later. And he was one who desired to be in the company of the Lord, which is the best company. All the time, you see Moses speaking to God, praying to God, desiring to talk to God. And young people and people who aren't as young as them, that's what we need to remember. We need to remember that, listen, we need to realize that no matter what company we're around or forced to be around, that we have a communication with the best company, that we have a communication with God. We get to sit at God's feet, such as Moses did. But we get to do it because of the connection with Jesus Christ. That we have Jesus and we get to pray to Him, we get to speak to Him, that He's in our presence, that we get that. All we have to do is just kind of pick up the phone, for more or less in better terms. But you see what happens to the Israelites later is the Israelites have an ungodly example. They have bad company, and it doesn't take them long to fall into depravity and sin. Aaron was actually once pretty good company. Aaron actually helped Moses out a lot. He was a leader. He was one who was really held to a really high regard. That's why when Moses wasn't there, they went to Aaron. It's so many times, though, just like in our own lives, there are people we're around who are good company at one time, who are good influence at one time. And maybe they've fallen off the wagon. Maybe they have kind of shoved aside the things of God. Maybe they're like, you know what? I'm tired of the church. I'm tired of God. I'm just going to kind of live like the world. People do that. If you haven't noticed that, I have. I've got friends who at one point in my life, they were on fire for the Lord. And now they're not. And this is what it looks like in Aaron's life. They come to Aaron and they're like, hey, we want you to do something because we don't know where our leader is. So he takes their gold and he melts it down and he makes a golden calf. He leads them astray. People, the company you keep, the people you make friends with in college, the people we make friends with at work, the people you are around will influence you greatly. Even if you don't want to. I have had times in my life, like I said, I'm from Louisiana. I went to Mississippi, went back to Louisiana, I'm Mississippi again. Different places I've been, I've lived differently. I have lived in ways that I shouldn't have, that weren't biblically sound. And a lot of times I was hanging out with people who weren't living a biblically sound life when I was, and slowly, inch by inch, little by little, I saw myself conforming to them. I saw myself conforming to my influences. I saw myself changing because I wasn't around my godly friends. I wasn't around the church. And slowly but surely I started looking more like the world. And that's what happens. That's what happens when we allow ourselves to surround ourselves with those who don't believe in the Word of God. To surround ourselves with those who don't desire to live for the Lord. And we see it here. And they created a God like that. They wanted something, so they made it. I mean, it was so fast they shoved aside a God who brought them out of Egypt. And they said, you know what, we're just going to start worshiping this golden calf. The golden calf. That was of no importance. The only value was gold. And you see, the thing is, they gave away their valuable aspects. The things they had of value. This gold that was so valuable, that was so important, they threw it aside. They threw aside worshiping God and they worshipped a calf. They brought anger to God. I mean, how much more precious is our worship to God? In that God is delighted in the way we live. God desires to be delighted in us. And my parents were the worst thing they could ever tell me when I was young. And I don't know about y'all, this is the way I was. I'm disappointed. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. I mean, it was the worst. I'd just be mad. And so many times, God just wants to be joyful in our life, how we're living our life. And it's valuable to Him. And our worship is valuable to Him. And the Israelites gave it away for a calf. A little golden calf. And we see that all it took was a little bit of misguidance. All it took was somebody saying, hey, let's just do this instead of wait for Moses. Moses told us where he was going. Moses told us he was going to meet with God, but you know what? Let's just go the other way. The last point before a story of great value to tie it together is, man, the things of this world just break so easy. We see in verse 19 and 20 where Moses was mad. He has a work of God. Tablets that were God's work, His handwriting. And his anger boiled because he came down there worshiping the calf and he broke them. And you see, we allow the world to influence us and we lose the valuable stuff, kind of like we said, but man, so many times that's just how we are. We leave what we're taught, what we've seen lived out, what we've seen God do in our lives and other people's lives. And we say, you know what, it was cool while it lasted. That's kind of what they said. It was cool while it lasted. God, you brought us out of Egypt. We saw the plagues. We saw this crazy stuff. And you've been leading us out towards your promised land. but it was cool while it lasted. I guess we're just going to ditch it. We're going to throw it to the side. And they went to that cow, and what happened was Moses, he took it, he got rid of that joker. He burned it, he ground it up, he made him drink it. God's promises don't go away like that. So many times we sit and we hold on to these valuable earthly things and we say, oh, well, you know what, the church will still be there, so I'm going to go live my life the way I want to live it. I'm going to go to college, I'm going to go move away from Purvis so nobody knows me, or I'm going to move to Purvis where nobody knows me, and I'm going to live my life the way I want to live my life. And maybe I'll come back to church. What you hold on to in this world is fragile. It will break, it will decay, it will go away. But the things that you hold on to in God's Word and the church will not. Because the church, this building will rot down eventually. This building will leave one way or the other. But the church as a body will not. We will be together with the Lord. And that is a value, and it is not perishable. And that's why it's a value, and that's why finding those who have the same values are important. To live a life like you need to live and like the Word of God lays out. But the other thing is, you have some people in your corner. And y'all need to know this. Moses pled with God. We see in verses 11 through 14. He pled for God's mercy. Because listen, God has been prone to send some fire down a time or two. And he wanted to kill them all. And Moses is like, no, I don't want you to do that, God. Please just change your mind. Because I want you to spare them. And he's probably thinking, man, this would be easier if he didn't know. Because y'all have been a thorn in my side. But Moses wanted to hold his friends and his people accountable. He prayed for them. He went to God. He petitioned to God for them. As you go to school, whatever may happen, you're going to have these people in this room petitioning to God for you. To be strong, to be of good faith, to be of good moral standards, to be strong, to not fall. You have family, you have friends, you have this church that desires to see you succeed, not just where you're going, but in your spiritual life. And just like Moses, we're going to be petitioning to God for y'all. Just like Moses, we're going to be praying and holding you accountable. And you need to find like friends and people who are of the same moral values, that are grounded in the Word and live, and find them and allow them to hold you accountable as well. We talk about how one person in your life may can mess stuff up. If you drop like food color in water, it dyes the water. It doesn't take a drop. There's some things you can put in water that you wouldn't want to drink if it was just one drop. And so many times it can be corrupted. We can be corrupted by allowing certain people in our lives and those around us. But I got to celebrate yesterday with my brother. He got his doctorate degree in New Orleans, and so we went down to celebrate. And it was interesting. I was going to use this as an example, but I didn't have all the numbers. I'm very proud of the seminary in New Orleans, not just because it's where I went, but I think the seminary is outside of the box, that it's even in New Orleans. It's a weird place for a Baptist seminary. But they're very unconventional. And a lot of people don't know how unconventional they are. But 20 years ago, they actually started teaching seminary-level classes in Angola prison. A lot of people don't know that. And what happened was the warden was like, hey, I want to reach these people. I want to change their lives. And so he contacted the seminary. The seminary said, okay, let's do it. So they got teachers and they got students. They pack up and they go there and they teach seminary-level classes. Classes that some of your staff here have taken. They're teaching in Angola prison. And it's so interesting. I didn't know the numbers, so when the president of the seminary was reading the numbers, I was sitting there typing down. They've been doing it for 20 years. They have 325 graduating inmates out of about 5,000. The inmates have started 25 congregations inside of the prison. And they're baptizing 100 people a year is about what they around estimate. It's generally a little over, a little under. It's out of 20 years, it's been 100 people a year. That's the average, that's the word. My education apparently didn't help me too much. And so the average is 100 people. It's affecting Angola so much that it used to be one of the bloodiest prisons, and now it's not. It's actually transforming the prison from the inside out to the point where a lot of national media's got on it, and a lot of other prisons are doing this now. They're requesting inmates from Angola, which has never happened, who have graduated from these classes, and they're calling them missionaries. It's pretty cool. No matter how easy it is for you to be changed, it's just as easy for you to change somebody else. We see that people we consider the worst of the worst. Angola is not for people who shoplift. He said, Dr. Kelly said, my first graduating class, the warden said, every one of these guys had at least killed one person who graduated. And we consider them the worst of the worst, and the gospel changed their lives in such a drastic way that now prisons are asking for inmates from Angola to be transferred to their little jails and their little prisons just so they can affect their prisons. You can go to college and you can affect those around you for Jesus. We can go to work and we can affect those around us for Jesus. If people who are murderers and everything else, that the Word of God has changed them, can change other people, we can. And it's sad that they're doing it a lot of times that we don't. So we need to realize that it's easy. It's bad company can corrupt us. We can lift people up, as Brother Bill says, out of the muck and the mire, out of this the brutal life, the brutal world we're in, and show them the truth of the gospel. And so that's what I want to challenge everyone to be like an inmate from Angola, and let people see Jesus through you, and be a good example. And so we're going to pray. We're going to have an opportunity of a time of response. Listen, if the Lord is working in your heart and you're like, hey, I don't even know what you're talking about, and you want to come down and you want to speak to somebody, we want to tell you about Jesus. If you just need to sit where you are and pray and say, God, I just don't understand. I don't know. I'm not living right. I got people around me that that probably shouldn't be hanging out with or shouldn't be spending time with. Do that. Listen, I'm sorry, graduate. If you want to come take your graduate, come kneel down and pray for them. You may embarrass somebody else. It won't be the last time. Y'all be embarrassed. We want to give you an opportunity to do what the Lord's living to. So let's pray.